Hi all, welcome to Leading Safely podcast, where today we will look at how to go about creating that positive influence you need to start seeing that change in culture. This isn't an easy topic, and Googling how do I create a positive influence when it comes to health and safety just won't give you that most appropriate answer. That's because the answer is different for every safety leader and is dependent on where your organisation falls currently in regards to their health and safety culture and where they would like to be. The method for influence needs to change depending on those answers. So, whilst I'm aiming for this episode to be another practical one with some good tips each of you could implement immediately, there may also be aspects of this that seem wishy-washy. To start the episode off on a nice positive note, after all, it is what we're talking about today, creating that positive influence, I'd like to share with you a light-hearted, positive story from my time in underground mining. For those of you who haven't been underground, it's a whole other world down there, and compared to surface mining, I found the camaraderie to be a lot more intense, to the point where if you went on annual leave or sick leave for a prolonged period of time, and for whatever reason the work crew dynamics changed, then when you came back on shift, you could potentially be shunned by your workmates. But let's leave that alone for now and go back to this camaraderie. So it's a very close-knit crew. The mine site I worked on had about 60 to 80 guys on shift, and girls, on shift at any given time. But the crew on my swing were my crew. They were on site every time I was on site. And as one of the safety squeezers on that site, part of my role included filtering through their Take 5s every day, reviewing their JHAs for quality purposes, conducting risk assessments, etc. So I got to know the names, and then through the risk assessments and general underground time out and about, I got to know people's faces. Throw into the mix my muffin making, lolly bringing capabilities, as well as that overly annoying bubbly personality you hear shining through, and people started to get to know who I was. Anyway, I always kept a friendly banter with the guys and girls I'd built rapport with. I wouldn't say they were my friends, but the language, jokes, vocabulary used between myself and the work crew was very much aligned with that comfortableness of a friendship, if that makes sense. You also try not to have favourites, but it's just how some workers would end up. There also had been a couple of serious incidents where someone had injured themselves and I was the designated return to work person, so would have to drive the injured person off-site 2 and a bit hours to the nearest remote town and then literally hold their hand while they have whatever needs to happen to them done at the hospital. No shame allowed. So you became close to the people you worked with, the crew, the management team, even the site cleaners. Anyway, one day I'd finished shift and I was back at camp grabbing dinner. I tried not to be too imposing and sit with the crews, at dinner or breakfast, etc. I would seek out a shift boss or an engineer or someone similar at an empty table. If there was one, after all, I am a safety nerd. As I go to sit down at an empty table, I notice across from me there's a group of the charge-up crew. I smile to say hello, and then just as I start to get into my dinner, I overhear one of the charge-up crew say to the other one, "How was your day today, Alex?" And Alex responds with, "I had a really super safe day today." I start smiling and the cockles of my heart start to warm. I know they're only being silly, but for me, this proved that I in some way, shape or form had made a positive influence on their behaviour. When I look back at that work group and all the others I've been a part of in my career, the ones where I have been a positive influence or created that positive influence have all been in situations where there were the following things. And some of these are to do with me, and some of these are to do with the workers or the team environment or even the management team or organisation. These aren't in any particular order either. The first thing is accountability. I always held myself to account and ensured that if I promised a worker I would look into an issue or provided them with feedback, answer a question, etc., then I would always get back to the worker within a timely manner. Holding myself accountable, I found, allowed workers to know they could trust me, and trust is huge. Engagement. If I was on site, I always engaged with any worker that I saw. It didn't have to be a full-on conversation, but if I saw a worker walk by, I would do the whole, "G'day mate, how are ya?" If I was observing a task, then I would take the time to have a proper engagement, ask questions, and really care about the answers that the workers would provide me with. I tried to keep conversations light and humorous and friendly at all times, unless there was a life-threatening issue, and then of course all of that sometimes went out the window. Motivation. I found when the morale was low on site or the office politics was starting to escalate, I would take time out to do a webinar or go to a conference or networking event or read an article, something that provided me with professional development, and this would refresh my motivation to keep trying with the workers that weren't swayed by me just yet. Next, rewarding worker achievements. I knew who on site put in quality hazard reports and who drew bananas on them. I knew who understood the risks of their job and those who took shortcuts. So the right people need to be rewarded for doing the right things. You've heard me tell you about the barbecue at that trucking company where I was told that I cost the company $75,000 in lost production time. Those small things like a team barbecue or a $50 Bunnings voucher sometimes can go a long way when it comes to creating that positive influence. You don't have to spend a ton of money to reward your workers. You can have an admin person print out a certificate for each worker for something they've done within the quarter, the month, etc., and hand it out at pre-shift meeting. You'll be surprised at workers' reactions to something so simple. Next, management commitment. I realised with experience that I could spend as much time in the field as I wanted. However, if the management team did not spend any time in the field or they made excuses not to do it, then it was like the ripple effect occurred amongst the workers. They started to show a lack of commitment in their jobs and in their health and safety commitments, and simple stuff like housekeeping would just get thrown out the window. Next, communication and consultation. Communicate and consult with workers at every opportunity you are provided with. Workers want to hear what is happening in management. Are there any changes coming that will impact on their lives? Do they need to be prepared for anything? So fill them in on as much as possible, even if the update is there is no update. And finally, the seventh thing that I've found is incident investigations. Whenever I worked for an organisation that allowed me to conduct a thorough, open and honest and critical investigation that looked deep into organisational failings and steered away from listing the root cause of an incident as poor decision making or operator error, I could see the positive influence flourish. When workers can see that their leadership team, their work health and safety team, and in general, the investigations conducted are transparent but fair and look at the company as much as the individual, then I found workers are more likely to participate in the investigational process, are more likely to share information with you, and are likely to demonstrate that they have been positively influenced. I've listed 7 functions here that I think can help you create a positive influence. However, this is obviously not an exhaustive list. If you have others that you would like to add or share with my networks or your networks, etc., please feel free to comment on LinkedIn or YouTube or email me directly at leadingsafely@outlook.com. So for now, I'm going to end this episode here. Keep an eye out as we have another exciting bonus episode coming out next week with a rail safety professional for a change of pace. Until then, stay safe.